Poverty in America. It's a concept that shouldn't be a thing, right? I mean, we are the richest nation in the world. Well, look around today and you're going to see a lot of us are struggling. For many, it's our own fault. Lots of us are broke because of decisions we made. But plenty of Americans live in poverty because of things outside their control. Perhaps it was a loss of jobs, or in many cases, it's the cost of living. Yes, poverty is a complicated issue here in the U.S., and no matter who's in office, it's a problem without an end in sight. The way we're going to measure poverty in this video is simple. We're going to look at which states have the highest percentage of its residents below the poverty line. And I'm confident you're going to be shocked by some of what we're going to talk about. Now, it's tough out there in America for millions of us. A lot of us, there's no real optimism. If you live in poverty or near it, you're certainly not alone. Now, today we're going to talk about the poorest places in America and why they're poor. And since we're going to be talking about poor people, we should probably live like poor people. So we're going to hitchhike our way across the country. So let's get ready to go to the poorest pockets of America. Okay, so that wasn't so bad, was it? It only took us 17 hours to hitchhike all the way to Alabama, but we made it for free. So you've heard it all before when it comes to the amount of poverty here in Alabama. This isn't a surprise. To determine our rankings, we looked at each state's poverty rate for the last 3 years. Here in Alabama, that number is 12%. So at some point, 12% of the population here has lived below the poverty line in the last 3 years. For comparison, the U.S. average is about 10.5%. There's a lot of states that are just behind Alabama's 12%. The poverty rankings we're going to use take into account the traditional measure of poverty, how many people earn less than the amount needed to live a decent life. But the census also factors in the cost of living too. So a population can earn a decent salary, but if the cost of living's high, they're going to struggle. Here in Alabama, a lot of the poverty isn't because of a high cost of living problem, though. When you look at the average cost to own or rent a home, Alabama's the 4th cheapest of all states. If it wasn't so cheap to live here, Alabama would be much poorer than it is. No, Alabama has so much poverty because so many people are uneducated and because there's not a lot of good jobs in the rural areas. The United Nations once did a study and it said parts of Alabama have the worst poverty in the developed world. One UN official said he was shocked at the level of environmental degradation in parts of rural Alabama, saying he had never seen anything like it before in the developed world. I think it's very uncommon in the first world, he said. There's not a sight that one normally sees. He cited one part of the state where raw sewage flowed from homes through exposed pipes and into trenches and pits. Now we're going to see the same problems in some other states we're going to talk about, which we'll address throughout the video. And while this isn't a cost of living problem in Alabama, in some states we're going to visit later, cost of living is the main reason so many people live in poverty. But let's visit our next state. Okay, so we're here in South Carolina, our 9th poorest state. That's not a surprise, right? Back in the colonial days, South Carolina was a very wealthy region. But in the 1900s, people started leaving this state, and it's been hard to create jobs outside of agriculture here for years now. It's just bad across the board here. South Carolina ranks 4th worst for credit scores, and it has the nation's 4th highest credit card debt. There's just too many people here trying to get by on low wages and with a poor education. Now, some South Carolina leaders feel it begins with the kids. South Carolina ranks 3rd from the bottom when it comes to the number of parks for kids to play in. It has the 10th worst ranked schools and the 5th lowest number of daycare facilities per capita. While this state's growing quickly, there's still a long way to go to change the rural poverty here. But it's not just the rural areas that are broke. Myrtle Beach has a lot of poverty, and there's a lot of people there. And even on the northern side of Charleston, a very wealthy city, there's lots of people living in poverty. One South Carolina activist says it's going to take the residents themselves to enact change. It's up to us as individuals to select an issue dear to our hearts. Whether it's housing, healthcare, nutrition, or addiction, we have to become an advocate for pragmatic solutions that really work. And hopefully, people in South Carolina do just that. Now, as a country, the U.S. has a lot of safety nets to prevent people from living in poverty. Social security payments help older folks. We knew that. There's food stamps and cash payments that help younger families make ends meet, and stimulus payments like we saw during the pandemic, although a lot of people took advantage of that one. But another big factor are medical expenses. In fact, today, medical expenses are the biggest factor contributing to poverty. That's just sad and pathetic. Here we are, the richest country. Because we're behind on medical bills. We're going to talk more about the cost of medical care as we get further into this video. And we can just walk to our next poorest state. No need for a ride there, because we're right next door in Georgia, which is tied with South Carolina. Here, 12.1% of residents live in poverty relative to the cost of living. In Georgia, it's not really a cost of living thing either. The cost of living here is the 6th lowest in the nation, though home prices are going up fast, especially in the Atlanta metro area. It's just in many parts of the state outside of the Atlanta area, there just aren't any good jobs. But there's good news for Georgia. The poverty rates have been going down. The job growth here has been increasing at a rate faster than the nation as a whole, and the state's tried to incentivize large companies to move to the state. A lot of the job growth has been in construction, transportation, and manufacturing, the types of jobs that don't pay great, but they're enough to lift people out of poverty. Kinda. Another encouraging sign is a lot more younger people with college degrees are moving to Georgia. And one researcher says Georgia's poverty rates have gone down because low-income, undocumented Hispanics have left the state. That's interesting. Now, I know you're looking at this list and you might be thinking, so far this list has been traditionally conservative states. And when you talk about poverty, politics is the first thing people from the left and right bring up. I see all the comments you guys write. The liberals say, most of the poor places are red states. Their policies aren't working. And the conservatives say, look at all these poor people in Democrat cities. It's welfare and communism that keeps these people so poor, so they'll keep voting blue. But is that true? Well, we're going to answer that question at the end of the video. But for now, we're going to hitch a ride to our next poorest state. Now we're here in New Mexico, our 7th poorest state. New Mexico's been a poor state forever now. If it wasn't for the super low cost of living, it would rank much higher on this list. The state ranks first in the country for childhood poverty. Look at this chart. 36% of kids under the age of 5 live in poverty in the whole state. That's the highest rate in the nation by far. And it's going up, too. Now, demographics have been a major driving force behind New Mexico's long-term poverty. The state is 47% Hispanic, and that's the highest rate in the nation. New Mexico is also 10% Native American, and that's the second highest rate, right behind Alaska. And Hispanics and Native American populations have traditionally high poverty rates and lower educational attainment. There's nothing new with that. That's how it's always been. But there's a bunch of issues New Mexico needs to address. They need educated people. They need more funding to get these people an education. And they need good jobs for people who do have an education. I mean, 1 in 5 kids here lives in a home where at least one parent is without a high school degree. 1 in 5. Plus, New Mexico cut child care funding by 27%, so working families struggle to get ahead. And get this, child care is more expensive than in-state college tuition is here. What the hell? And in New Mexico, the poor pay 11% of their income on taxes, and the rich pay 5% of their income on taxes. There's just a bunch of backward stuff going on in New Mexico. Come on, New Mexico, you can fix this. We're going right next door to our next poorest place, and it's not Arizona. This might be a huge surprise, but it's Texas. Yes, one of our most populous states and the place more people are moving to than anywhere else. In Texas, 12.5% of people live in relative poverty. And it's not the cost of living here. Texas is about average when it comes to the cost of living. So what's going on in Texas? Well, clearly there's a big discrepancy between the